doing. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Dynasty 365, the Dynasty Fantasy Football podcast here at Fantasy and Frames. I'm your host, Jorge Edwards, and with me I got JT and I got Aiden, and today we're going to be talking about Dynasty risers and fallers at the quarterback position now that the NFL draft is over, giving you some ideas as far as where the value really lies, if there is such a thing at the quarterback position for Dynasty, especially for the veteran quarterbacks. We're going to be talking about the veteran quarterbacks as well. So just stay tuned, and we'll be right back after this. So, yes, folks, we are kicking off Fantasy and Frames Wednesday like we always do here on Dynasty 365. And I got my guys here who, let's face it, a lot of the people out there who are watching or listening to this show, I don't think you all realize just like how labor intensive following fantasy football is from being a content creator's, from being a content creator's point of view, because, this is like the payoff of everything, right? This is what it all comes down to. It's basically like game day for us. We put on all the reps, we do all the research, blah, 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 blah. And then you get to game day and everything just becomes instinctive. You're just used to everything and you feel comfortable. And then the next day it's like, all right, back to the writing the articles, back to doing the research, back to doing this and that. And so for these two gentlemen that I'm sharing the screen with in particular, I just want to give a big shout out to you guys. You all are true model examples of what it's like to be a hard worker in the fantasy community. So kudos to you, JT, and kudos to you, Aiden. Just great stuff you all do.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
I'm excited to be here.
And so like we mentioned at the top of the show, we're going to be talking about dynasty risers and fallers at the quarterback position, veterans specifically. For those who are looking into reading more about, where the quarterbacks, are at in terms of the fantasy fallout, as far as the rookies are concerned, now that the draft is over and we have landing spots, look out for the article series. We're going to be talking about NFL Dynasty fallout at the quarterback, running back, tight end, defensive line, linebacker, defensive back positions. So we're going to be covering all that over at fantasyandframes.com, and we'll have those articles dropping really soon, as well as check out our rankings over at fantasyandframes.com. Some of them are being updated now as we speak, as well as they will be, for the most part, completed by a lot of people by the beginning of the weekend. So we'll be tweeting that out or posting that, whatever. Or as we've learned last week on Blue Sky, skeeting it out. And so the fact that is actually a term
doesn't sound right, but whatever.
Wait, do you not know the song by Little John, where from the early 2000s? I guess not. You were.
I know that one, obviously. Yes,
I guess not.
Wow.
I'm just not on Blue Sky, so I don't.
I got you. It's from the windows to the walls. We got you covered here in fantasy.
I know content.
That. Okay, well that is. I feel slightly less old now.
See, Jorge, you just got to sing it. You just got to sing it out.
Please don't.
Yeah. Well, if. It's funny. I saw on TikTok and Instagram, which, by the way, folks, if you're on TikTok right now, first of all, welcome. It's great to finally have that access to that platform. And if you have any questions, please drop it in the TikTok chat. And Aiden's going to be monitoring that for us today. And he'll be giving us the questions. If you have anything fantasy football related, especially dynasty related, drop it in the chat and Aiden will convey your message to us and we'll be able to answer you all in real time as we're going. And of course, if you were listening to this tomorrow morning in podcast form, obviously you have already done the hard work. You've gone to whatever podcast platform you listen to podcasts at. You've subscribed to the Dynasty 365 podcast. You're rating, reviewing, and subscribing, obviously, giving us, the 5 stars, of course, or the 4.5s, and I guess we'll take a 4, but if you really don't like us, even then, let us know what you think, what we can get better at, we can improve upon. But we hope that you get a lot of information from us regardless. And those who are following us on all our social media platforms today, thank you very much. And before we get into the topic, let's shoot the shit a little bit. JT, what's going on with you, man? What's new?
Oh, just working away, man. Working away. Got a huge DLF article coming out this week on running backs. Basically, I wrote a bunch of articles breaking down every running back leading into the draft. And now that the draft is over and we know where they're at, what teams they're on, where they got drafted, I'm breaking down the top 25 RBs, where they're going in fantasy drafts now, where I ranked them, where I scheduled them. I was on a lot of them, I have to be honest, where I had them getting drafted, and everything was pretty on point for a lot of them. I had a few big swings and misses on a couple guys, but working on that, trying to knock out some of that stuff, and then always, hammer out the IDP stuff as well. As I'm going to have an IDP mock. I had one just IDP on DLF the other day. We'll shoot the gap later, but I have one combined coming up next week. So a lot of people always ask for that offensive defense combined. So I'll have one of those coming out next week as well. And then other than that, drafted, baby. I'm knee deep in drafts already. I've already got 4 or 5 completed. I've got 2 or 3 more going on right now. So we're in it, man. We're full on go for the rest of the summer.
In our Fantasy and Frames staff Dynasty League, which was started a few years ago, we just finished our rookie draft. I want to say yesterday or the day before. And it came down to the very last pick, who Nate Markham on 4th and Frames, so you can catch later tonight, had the last pick. And so for anybody who's been watching 4th and Frames the past few weeks, the name Kane Medrano has been super popular amongst us for all the wrong reasons.
Let's not go.
We won't get into the reasons why, but for all the wrong reasons, his name was brought up. And Drew Scott, I blame you for this.
I still blame Drew.
Yeah, Drew's the one to blame. But, there was a lot of talk of like, Kane Medrano, he was one of the faster linebackers at the combine, or the fastest, I want to say. Yeah, and then he ended up actually getting drafted on Saturday's draft day by the Washington Commanders. And so we thought to ourselves, it's only fitting that with the last pick, Nate takes Kane Medrano, and the son of a gun didn't. He just left him right there.
He's the one. He
didn't go IDP with the last pick. That is, I thought
he went IDP. He went.
Did he? He went Riley Leonard.
No, he didn't.
Riley Leonard for the Colts.
Yeah.
I'm like, how do you not go IDP with the last pick of the draft? He went Riley Leonard.
Yeah.
Quarterback, Notre Dame to the Colts. I was a little shocked by Nate. He's an IDP guy too. The fact that he didn't go IDP with the last pick, I was a little shocked.
Yeah, and then he's like, he put some BS in the draft chat where he's like, well, the logical pick would have been Kane Medrano, but Kane in true form would want to be on the waiver wire and be one of those waiver wire darlings.
He's leaving him for you, Jorge. He's leaving him for you to jump in there.
Let me tell you, if I need to look at my roster, my IDP linebackers a little bit more closely, and you know what, he may be the saving grace there for my IDP roster there.
And Jorge, you and me, neither one of us took the first IDP guy. I was shocked by that.
Drew.
Drew took the first one. I ended up taking the next 2 before anybody else got back in, and I almost took a third IDP before somebody took one. I was like, I think everybody forgot his IDP. I'm just sitting here drafting all the IDP guys, and nobody else was taking them.
I only took one total. So.
I was pumped, man. There was the only thing in that draft, you gotta realize in that league, it's a little bit of a shallower league for how many guys we start. So it's a little tougher to take a bunch of rookie defensive players just because you run out of room on your roster pretty fast. Like I had a ton of picks in our draft, so that's why I went IDP. But I'm already looking at my team going, who am I dropping? I was like 6 guys over because I had so many draft picks. I'm like, oh man, I gotta drop guys. I never want to drop any of the guys I just drafted. So, but enough IDP talk, Jorge. We'll save that for the next show.
Well, yes, we will. Shoot the Gap is up next, obviously at the 9:00 hour on the East Coast, and then of course we got 4th and Frames after that. But a notification just came across my phone that is actually going to be tying into a big piece of news that dropped today around the NFL. And that is my waiver claim for a wide receiver I had dropped just yesterday went through, and I was able to get him back for nothing. And that is wide receiver Roman Wilson of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Why should you care about Roman Wilson for the Pittsburgh Steelers? Because opportunity is potentially there for him now, because as we all got the notification at 7 o'clock this morning, 7:30 this morning, George Pickens traded to the Dallas Cowboys. Again, for dynasty purposes, if I could get Roman Wilson on the cheap, I will probably, Can you get him for the cheap now? You can get him.
I'd still
Maybe.
say relatively, yeah.
Maybe, it's one of those things where it's like he hasn't really done anything to establish himself yet for the Steelers, but there was off-season talk in January about they feel really comfortable with him and his progress, and he has the opportunity to make a big jump in season 2, blah 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 blah. But then they go ahead and make this trade with the Cowboys and send George Pickens off there. And for dynasty purposes, I kind of want to ask you guys, what are your thoughts on just anybody in the Steelers offense outside of Caleb Johnson? Like, what are your thoughts for DK as far as his dynasty value now? Is he somebody that we're going to be like, ooh, he's going to be a target hog, but then again, he's going to be the only one, so teams are going to be keying off of him, so his productivity could drop.
Jorge, I didn't think I could possibly be lower on the Steelers offense going into the season as I was last year. I was a little fired up about Justin Fields, but then Fields, as soon as they went to Russ, I was out on the Steelers offense. I am, as a Steelers fan, completely devastated. I don't know what they're doing right now. You wouldn't spend all that money to get DK just to get rid of Pickens. Obviously, everyone's saying, well, you got to get rid of him because you're not going to re-sign him. But to me, making this move, you're just basically saying, like, we're out on this year. I mean, Roman Wilson, I hope he can be good. I like Roman Wilson, injured all year last year. I think he's in for a good comeback. I saw you dropped him, and I went back to pick him up. And again, I had too many players on my roster. I couldn't drop anybody fast enough to get him.
Success.
Because I was still like 3 or 4 players over the max. So I'm still like fighting. So I couldn't pick anybody up because I was over the max. I am not liking this offense, man. I don't like it at all. I don't know what they're thinking. To me, if you're making this Pickens move, there's no way you're going to get Aaron Rodgers. I mean, if you are Aaron Rodgers, a 1 year trying to win it all, you don't get rid of Pickens if you're trying to win it all. This offense, it seems ugly to me. I've already been having a hard time talking myself into Caleb Johnson in rookie drafts, where he's at. Oh, man, I just hope that they just sprinkle Muth all day long with targets, because that's about the only guy I'm in on right now on tight end. I have a ton of Pat Freiermuth. I hope they throw it to him all the time. DK here is going to be interesting to see what they can make happen with him, as now he's in the same situation that Pickens was last year, where Pickens was the only guy. And so everybody was all over him because there was nobody else to throw to. And now DK, everybody's going to be all over him. And they've got, I don't know, man. I, as a Steelers fan, have no idea what this team is trying to do right now. I don't see the vision. I don't know what they're trying to do. Every Steelers fan I know is like, oh, they're just trying to load up for 2026 draft. Yeah, I'm like, are we sure? Or do they just not know what they're doing? Because I feel like they don't know what they're doing, and that's not really the plan. Also, as a Devy college guy, I'm not super loving this 2026 draft at the moment. There's some guys I like in it, but it's not anywhere close to as deep as this last draft. So I have to tell you, I am never this negative early in the season. I usually try to always be positive. I'm already told my cousin, who's a Steelers fan, I was like, I think I'm out on the Steelers this year. I think they're going to be bad. I already am very nervous. He's not as bad as me. He thinks that they're still going to be okay. I don't. I really don't. But if you can go pick up Roman Wilson for cheap right now off the free agent wire, absolutely is the time to go get him. I think this team is just going to run 12 personnel, all Washington, all Muth. They might get Hayward in there a bunch, run 3 tight ends, run a lot of 13 personnel. This team might just be pounding the rock every freaking play and then throwing to 40 yards downfield to DK like 7 or 8 times a game.
Great news for those Darnell Washington fantasy managers who are hoping that he'd come.
I still have a ton of them. I'm holding him. It's year 3 breakout.
Exactly.
Year 3 breakout for the tight end.
Exactly. So as you can see, folks who are watching right now, nifty little feature now. Now we can see all of you in the chat, in everybody's comments in the various chats on our social media pages going on screen. I just want to give a shout out here to a few people who are always great supporters of us here at Fantasy Frames. We got Jamie, got Vince from down under in Australia. What's going on, gentlemen? Brandon's in the chat. A lot of talk about, like you were saying, JT Freiermuth probably gets a big jump here. Jamie with the Steelers are the ground and pound. And then Brandon has to go and say something completely completely atrocious right now. He says the Cowboys come second in their division now. That is BS, man.
That's not going to happen.
That's that.
Oh,
Come on.
Cowboy fans are living the dream this
Oh
morning.
my
On
God.
Twitter, they were just like, "We're
They were
winning the
losing.
division. We're winning 12 games." They're like,
Say that
they're out
every
of their
year.
mind. I haven't seen Cowboy fans like switch modes this quickly on one player, which is hilarious. I felt like I was the biggest George Pickens fan ever. And it's like all of a sudden there's George Pickens fans everywhere. Everyone loves George Pickens today. And I'm like, I thought I was the only guy that liked George Pickens anymore in fantasy, but I guess the Cowboys fans absolutely freaking love him.
Oh my God. Everywhere I'm looking like CD and Pickens. You name me a better wide receiver duo. I'm like, are you fucking serious? Like, are you really?
Jalen Waddle, Devontae.
I mean, yeah.
It's so fun. I mean, I like it. I think
Chase,
it's a good matchup, but it's
right.
like
Chase.
I just think it's funny. Like we're like what 2 years removed from everyone saying Pickens isn't very good. He
And now
can't
he's the best.
separate. He can't do anything. He's super overrated. And now all of a sudden we're like top 2 duo in the league. Top 2 duo. Everybody loves him. Hey, I guess it mixes up my Steelers players because I have 87 Steelers players. So I guess now I have one Cowboy to go with all my Steelers players now that Pickens is on the Cowboys.
That's hilarious. Yeah, no, I mean, it's one of those things for Jamie says it right here, Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter. I mean, we have to wait to see that. Not yet, but we're going
to talk about that here in the quarterbacks when we bring up the quarterbacks here in a little bit.
Well, you know what? Let's get into that. Let's get into that. We're going to talk about quarterback risers and fallers, of course, like we mentioned earlier. Talking about the veterans now that the NFL draft is over. Folks, we got the free agencies pretty much wrapped up. Although there are some pieces still out there. Keenan Allen's still out there, but we'll get to him when he becomes fantasy relevant, meaning he's actually on a team. But let's talk about this. The draft is over. Let's talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence. Let me pull up my rankings here as we go. Internet, please work. Great, it's working. Fantastic. I love when the internet works. Trevor Lawrence was before the draft my quarterback 18. I have to move him into my top. It's my top 15 now. He's right now bumping up to 14. He is definitely a riser in this offense. What are your thoughts with that? Is that too rich for your blood, or does that sound about right? Or am I not being high enough on Trevor Lawrence here, Aiden?
I think you could argue. I'm trying to pull up my rankings, but I think you could argue that that's even like a few spots too low. You said QB 15 now?
Yeah.
Okay. I have him around that 12, 13 range. I know that might be a tad high, but Liam Cohen basically came out and said Travis Hunter is going to be a wide receiver first, and then if needed, a corner second. So I think it's wheels up for this offense. Listen, if Trevor Lawrence can't figure it out this year with Liam Cohen, then it's probably like time to be concerned. But I'm expecting him to have a big quote-unquote bounce back, breakout, whatever you want to term it as. And I don't really think that much of their running back room. I know that's a consensus, but I personally don't either. So they're going to have to throw the ball a ton. The defense is okay at best, so they'll be in a lot of positive game scripts. So I really like this. And I have always said that Trevor Lawrence, for fantasy purposes, has an untapped rushing potential. I really wish that the offense would, coaching staff, and maybe the new coaching staff does, but I really wish in the past they would run him more, because I think he has an untapped ceiling of rushing upside, if that makes sense. I think positive touchdown regression, if he stays healthy, is coming for him. So yes, I'm relatively pretty high in Trevor Lawrence in this Jaguars offense for this season in 2025.
JT, what are your thoughts here?
I've been a Trevor Lawrence guy for a while. I know it hasn't worked out necessarily. I think this is going to be his possibly his best offensive coaching staff, and I think it's going to be the best players around him. If they can keep him healthy is the key. I know it's hard because you almost look through Trevor Lawrence with like you want to look at him like it's like you've had these crazy glasses, like dark
like
glasses
prodigy since he was in high school.
It's like because everybody expected him to be the next greatest of all time, and he wasn't that right away. That people just said, "Oh, he's terrible." Well, if you go back and look at his career stats, he's not terrible. He hasn't. He's had no help, and so the fact is, he's still only 25 years old. People, I mean, people are acting like he's he's played his whole career. He's 30. Like, he hasn't come through. He's still only 25 freaking years old. His best year was his second year in the league. 4,100 yards, 25 touchdowns, 8 picks. If he does that, he's above Caleb Williams. He's above Bo Nix. He's above all these guys that everybody all of a sudden is putting over him. If he puts up that type of season again, which those guys haven't put up that type of season yet, if he does that type of season, I think you got to go. He's top 10. He's thrown for 4,000 yards in 2 of the last 3 seasons. Last year only threw for 2,000 because he got injured, only played in 10 games. He was playing injured. Even the year before, he played the back half of the season banged up, 4,000 yards, 21 touchdowns, 14 picks. I tell you what, I think he's over 4,000 yards easily this year. I think he's pushing 30 touchdowns, and I think he ends up with under 10 picks. I really do think he's got a top 10 season in him. I think he is a buy now for me big time. You probably missed the window a little bit with the Hunter hype. If you went and got him before, you probably were a little bit better off. But I'm just telling you what, I just think new offense, Hunter, BTJ in his second year. We saw what he could do at the end of the year. I just think they're going to get a new, fresh offense here. I love Lawrence. He's top 10 for me. I know people are down on him, but he's still only 25. We've seen him produce, is just not the magical numbers that we've expected, the out of control numbers, but also people are more harping on him for losses just because the team hasn't been good. But for fantasy purposes, 2 4,000 yard seasons with over 20 touchdowns in each year. Sign me up, dude. Sign me up.
So we got John McGlynn in the chat here over on X. Trevor Lawrence to the moon. Shocker that John is a Trevor Lawrence.
Me and John are all over T-Law. We have been. We fight each other in every league to get him.
We got a great question here from Jamie. I want to throw out there and pose this question, and I guess we'll all answer. He asked for Dynasty, Trevor Lawrence or Baker Mayfield. I would take Baker just because I like the balance of that team a lot better, the better offensive situation. And let's say Mike Evans does retire. Well, you drafted a pretty good wide receiver, in the draft. So you're continuing to surround him with playmakers. Now, the counter argument could be that for fantasy purposes, the fact that the running game, like you were alluding to, Aiden, is not exactly what we like to call good. The offense will be, reliant on passing the ball a lot. And so the volume coming out of Trevor Lawrence in the passing game for maybe the next year or so, or 2 years down the road, assuming they don't address the running back position, or maybe they have, and we just don't know it yet. I could see where the argument can be made that Trevor has more of an upside in that regard, but that's to me, and it's funny that I'm using this analogy. To me, that's like the Blake Bortles effect. Both also a former Jacksonville Jaguar. You're counting on garbage time production, game script production. Man, like I almost came close to winning a fantasy championship on the back of Blake Bortles because the team was just so bad. And yet in the fourth quarter, he just racked up all these yards and touchdowns. And I'm just like, versus the team that's competent on offense, or what are we talking about? Like maybe 2 or 3 points per game separating the two if that situation.
Yeah,
I would take the quarterback who has the better offense. I'd go Baker here. Aiden, what are your thoughts?
I'd go Baker too, while you were talking. So I agree with you. One, he's proven it a lot more than T-Law, and 2, I think Baker, between the two, is a more safer quarterback for 2025 and beyond, if that makes sense. Like Trevor Lawrence, I'm expecting him to have a breakout, but what if he disappoints? Baker, I think, is more safer. You know what you're getting more so than Trevor, in my opinion.
JT, what are your thoughts?
For me, I'm T-Law on this. I got to go the opposite way. T-Law, 5 years younger than Baker for Dynasty. If you're going to one and done season, I think you probably take Baker this year. But for me, I'm taking T-Law, 5 years younger. If you go through the stats, obviously Baker off the charts last year, 4,500 yards, 41 touchdowns, 16 picks. But Baker has exactly the same amount of 4,000 yards seasons as T-Law, two of them. Both of them have 2. Outside of the 41 touchdowns last year, his highest total before that was 28. Him and T-Law were basically neck and neck on that. To me, they're very similar players. I have T-Law because of the age factor slightly higher than Baker, but Baker is right there for me. He's about 2 spots behind T-Law in my rankings. If I'm looking for a 2-year window, I'm probably taking Baker. If I'm like a team trying to win a championship and I'm like want as much of the stats as I can possibly get, I'm probably going Baker. But for me, long term, I'm trading T-Law for Baker, especially if I'm in any kind of rebuild, a younger team that I need. I'm a year or 2 out. I'm probably moving Baker now and see if I can get T-Law plus for Baker.
Got a trade question here from Jamie. He says, I traded Lawrence Conklin in a 2026 late round 4th and received Baker and Arroyo. Your thoughts? I think you fleeced whoever. I mean, I think Baker has the upside, and I love what I'm hearing about Arroyo in Seattle. Just a lot of positive hype. We saw what he did in Miami. I think you get like to what you were saying, Aiden, about Baker Mayfield. There's a little bit of potential. There's more certainty on that side of the trade, I want to say, versus some uncertainty on the other side of the trade.
I think it's pretty even for both sides, if I'm being honest. But
I think it's a pretty fair trade. I think short-term Baker, you got the slight edge. Arroyo, I like a lot. I think he's going to be better than Conklin in that, obviously, that 26 late 4th. Whoever you traded that 26 late 4th, take a Rondé Gadsden to back up Conklin. Oh, it's the 26 late 4th, so never mind. If it was 25th, I'd be like, take it. I think it's a pretty even trade. I like that one, though. If you're going Baker and Arroyo, I like that a lot. If I'm going to get younger, I take Lawrence, but I would take Arroyo over Conklin in the 4th pretty easily. Yeah. So I said you probably won that trade with Baker and Arroyo.
I was floored earlier today, but one of my slow drafts, Arroyo fell all the way to the 501.
Wow. Ooh, that's by far the latest I've seen him
shocked.
in any draft. I've not seen him get – I've seen him maybe get to 4-1, and that's about it. I have not seen him make it to the 4th in many drafts. He's been pretty much early to late 3rd for me in almost every draft so far.
But I got Terrence Ferguson in the late 4th, so like all the tight ends fell.
Tight ends fell. No, that makes sense then.
Nice. Folks who are just tuning in, first of all, thank you very much for wherever you're tuning in. But I don't know if you knew this now, but we're streaming on TikTok. So if you're going down the rabbit hole of things on TikTok, why don't you stop for a minute, go to the Fantasy and Frames channel and watch our stream there. And of course, we appreciate you watching wherever you're watching, though. So then, so that was my quarterback. I think Trevor Lawrence moves up for me. Definitely a riser given the drafting of Hunter and, and also the subtraction like of Gabe Davis today released. It's one of those things where it's like, okay, so basically you're minimizing the number of weapons, but you've increased the quality of weapons around him.
That's like quality.
So addition by subtraction, I guess, is the old thing there. Aiden, who's the riser for you?
This is going to be extremely obvious for the whole world, but I'm going to go with Chicago. I'm going to say him anyway. Chicago Bears QB Caleb Williams. If you look what they did this offseason, they had one hell of an offseason. They got their coach, offensive genius, touted like that, in Ben Johnson. They significantly upgraded the offensive line. All 5 stars are plus starters now for Caleb Williams. And just look at the weapons he has. On top of Roma Dunze and DJ Moore and Cole Kmet, he already had. They added Colston Loveland. They added Luther Burden. I'm kind of concerned how the whole weapons will shake out. But for Caleb Williams himself, I want to invest in Caleb Williams heavily for 2025 and beyond. There's literally I think he has a sneaky rushing ceiling as well. Last year, he didn't use it as much as he should have. He took too many sacks, slow processing speed, whatever. But I think Ben Johnson will, quote unquote, shake that out of him. Ton of weapons here. Simply upgrade the offensive line. I mean, this is just positive regression or whatever you call it through and through. I want to be above consensus on Caleb. I have him. This is going to be spicy, but I have him as QB7 for 2025, and I could probably be even higher for beyond 2025. And second-year players are all, no matter what position, really, are always a phenomenal investment to make. And Caleb Williams is absolutely going to be a phenomenal investment to make for 2025 and beyond. I'm sure you're not going to disagree with me, but that's just what I wanted to bring up quick. It's obvious, but I wanted to bring it up anyway.
No, that's a good one though, because a lot of people, for fantasy, it's very easy for a lot of people out there to, offensive lineman. How does that help? In fantasy, it helps because it protects your quarterback, and when you give Luther Burden, JT's guy, another weapon in that passing game, to the moon, as the kids say. It's one of those. Aiden, your people, you're right. Do you say to the moon? Is that your thing?
No, that's even younger than me a few years.
Nice. I love it. Ageists over here. All of us here on Dynasty 365.
My 12-year-old brother says that if that helps you.
Okay. That's a good barometer of where we're going with that. And I feel dirty. I feel dirty now for recalling every single time I've ever said it, or tweeted it or skeeted it, or posted it. Whatever, you get what I'm saying, folks. But yeah, no, I have him as my dynasty quarterback 10. I like that a lot. 7. I mean, that's not too far away for me in terms of rankings. But I love this. Like this guy, we said it last year. Oh, he's surrounded by tons of weapons. He's walking into a great situation. I guarantee you that's where like a majority of us were saying last year after the draft. He has so many receiving options. The running game is potentially there. They got 2 running backs, Roshan and Swift.
Yep.
Yeah. So now it's like, okay, well, yeah, Caleb Williams is going to be in a good spot, and it's everybody forgot. Like, yeah, but he's going to get sacked a lot. The offensive line.
Now he probably might not nearly as much. So.
Right. Exactly. What are your Mr. Scampers? We see you in the chat. He says, not to the moon, but to the outer atmosphere. I like that. I like that a lot.
Can I bring up one more thing about Caleb quick before we hand over to JT? So there's literally, I was thinking about this. Now with obviously DJ Moore, Roma Dunze, what they just added in Loveland Burden, there's literally not a single personnel package where the Chicago Bears offense could go into where they don't have plus starters at every level of the field. Like, that's just crazy for Caleb Williams. Even more reason to buy in.
All right, JT, what are your thoughts here on Caleb Williams moving up for dynasty quarterbacks?
I like Williams. Again, sometimes we look at these stats and we jump in on guys and we're like, he was the 1-1. And if they don't have just out of this world stats, people just freak out. Now, his stats weren't that much worse than some other guys, in all honesty, but because their teams made the playoffs and they won the playoffs, everybody jumped on him like, oh, he's so much better than him, even though Williams, technically the Bears should have been better. Bad coaching cost them quite a few games. I think Williams is on the way up, man. This offense, it was good last year. We knew he was going in a good situation as far as offensive players. It just got better. They finally helped the line out. I love the Luther Burden pick. I think it's phenomenal. I thought it was great. I thought the Loveland pick was phenomenal. Those 2 guys were my tight end 1 and my wide receiver 1. So like outside of Travis Hunter. So I was like, I'm all about that pick. I wish they would have went running back a little bit earlier. But I think Caleb Williams, man, if he and Ben Johnson can figure it out together and connect, I think there is a ton of room for him to grow, a ton of room for him to be a really good fantasy quarterback. I think sometimes we get in this mix where we think guys should just score insane their first year when they're the 1-1, and when they don't, even if they have a solid year, if they don't score insane points, people are like, they're not that good. Caleb Williams had a really good rookie season. But because he didn't throw for 4,000 yards and 35 touchdowns, people are like, I'm kind of out on him. Like, the problem is the expectations are just way too high on these guys early on. Yep. I think he's going to have a really good year. Is he going to have a 4,540 touchdown season? I don't think so. But I think he's going to be a top 10 quarterback. And especially if you're talking about dynasty, I think he's easily top 15 for fantasy this year, but dynasty moving forward, how young he is and where the Bears are rebuilding, I like him even more. He's top 10 for me.
Easily. Yep.
I would say people who are, concerned about Caleb Williams after year 1, let's go back in this. Let's go to the most recent quarterback that has finally taken that step to relevance. And Aiden, you and I were trying to negotiate a trade. Did not work earlier today for this
I know
quarterback.
it's your guy, yeah.
But it's my guy. It's Bryce Young. Look, it took him a couple of years, but look, he finally, or a year, and a half of a season.
Benching.
But it finally clicked, and it clicks. You never know when it's going to click. You got to give these guys time to develop, especially if they're going to really, really bad teams. I'm not saying he is this guy, so pump your brakes, everybody, just because I want to say the name Peyton Manning. But Peyton Manning's rookie year was absolutely atrocious. Okay,
a ton of picks. Yeah.
It takes time for these, elite talents. These guys, they don't just solve a team's problem overnight. You kind of have to build the team around him the right way. And it looks like Ben Johnson and the Bears are doing that now.
I mean, people look at his stats and they're like, blah. I'm like, he threw for 3,500 yards, 20 touchdowns, and only 6 interceptions last year. That's a really good rookie season. If the Bears go 9-8 and make the playoffs instead of 5-12, which they easily could have done because they blew a lot of games they could have won. If he does that, he beats Jaden Daniels in a head-to-head match. He beats Jordan Love in a head-to-head match that he should have won. Should have beat the Lions. People look at him completely different if that happens. They look at him completely different if the Bears make the playoffs last year and win the games they should have won. So, to me, I don't even, I would think going into year 2 as a former, number 1 pick, people would be too high on him. He might actually be a buy right now. I haven't tried to go get any shares of him, but I'm guessing some people might be low on him. I'm guessing people that took him at 101 don't want to move him for anything because they took him at 101. But we saw what happened with Bryce Young. People were taking Bryce Young, and then year 2, they were selling him off for freaking nothing. And beginning of last year, you could get Bryce Young for like a late second round pick and some garbage. Like, I don't think you can get Caleb Williams that cheap. Don't get me wrong there, but you might be able to get him for a reasonable value. I think people they're not looking at this realistically. I mean, that especially as a Bears, and I know it's the Bears. But the history of the Bears, that's one of the better seasons in Bears history for a QB. Exactly, but it's one of the better years in history for them. You add another 800, 300, 400 yards. Say he's getting close to 4,000. Say he's at 38, 39, and he throws 26, 27 touchdowns, and he's still only at like 5-6 picks. That's a really solid season. That's a Baker season every year, but last year. That's a T-Law season pretty much every year he's been in the league. So, I mean, he's right in that range with a ton of other guys. And people got to realize that was like Tom Brady most of his career. Like, he had those monster years at the end and those couple of huge years with the Pats. But for most of his career, he was a 36 to 3,800 yards, mid to high 20s touchdowns and under double-digit picks.
Caleb definitely had a good rookie year. Just when you compare it to Jaden, he didn't. So
that's right, my guy Jaden Daniels. Love it. I'll do anything to promote my guy Jaden Daniels.
I will too. So
well, there we go. Let's get into.
Well, and I would say Jaden Daniels. Did he have a really good year? Yes, but really, it was the rushing that was the only difference for those guys in the record. The fact that they went to the playoffs and won was the huge difference for people. Because if you actually looked at their stats next to each other, Jaden Daniels threw for 3,500 yards. Zach Same threw for 25 touchdowns. Okay, 5 more touchdowns, 9 picks. So threw for more picks, but threw for a few more. It really was the rushing yards that was the separator for Jaden Daniels. I mean, outside of that, if you just went pure passing across the board, they were almost equal. So it really was the rushing yards that separated Daniels, and the fact that his team won and went to the playoffs, and Caleb Williams' team, all anyone could remember all year was how they kept blowing games at the end of games. And it wasn't his fault that they were blowing games, but everyone, the quarterback ends up getting that heat most of the time.
No, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Let's go over another quarterback is a riser. So for me, I think Drake May is somebody that needs to be moving up a little bit more. I actually have him right behind Trevor Lawrence currently at 16. But I think you can make the case that he could potentially be a top 13 dynasty quarterback here for fantasy purposes. Look, that offensive line is getting a huge bump here with that rookie they drafted who went on stage and says, "I will die to protect Drake May." Like Drake May is not getting sacked.
There you go.
He's not getting sacked on the left side of the offensive line this season. I'm just letting you know. And when somebody like that comes at you,
murder D lineman.
Yeah, exactly. Will Campbell. Sorry, name blanked on me for a second. But it's one of those things where like you address the offensive line, you start addressing the defensive side of the ball. We're talking Vrabel stuff now. Things are starting to become a little bit, what I like to call boring but good. You look back to the time in Tennessee for Mike Vrabel as the head coach, like they were division champs for a couple of years, but nobody remembers it and nobody talks about it because they didn't get that far in the playoffs. But that being the case, like they had a very quiet, boring season, yet they found out ways to win in the division, win, these games to help solidify their division titles. Okay, that's great. And now you're telling me you have a second year, top 10 quarterback, top 5 quarterback from the NFL draft who, look, he didn't have like the greatest statistical year, much like Caleb Williams, and even less so than Caleb Williams. But he showed he showed flashes, he showed poise. And now, even if Stephon Diggs is, 70% of what he was prior to tearing his ACL, that's still an upgrade over what they had. We look at, everybody's starting to talk about Kyle Williams now a lot more, the slot wide receiver who's right now behind Pop Douglas on the depth chart, courtesy of ourlads.com. Mac Hollins, the deep threat, the barefoot wonder, as I like to call him, because he literally walks around in bare feet. You have Hunter Henry, who's still there, who I think for some reason
reliable target. I mean,
he is such a reliable target, and we'll get into the Dynasty Diners and Dynasty Risers and Fallers episode at tight end. He's somebody I want to be talking about. Spoiler alert! I don't know if that's much of a spoiler alert, but it is. It's one of those things where Drake May just. Again, one of those things he's going to get the opportunity to. I think the defense is going to keep games slightly tighter and put him in a position to succeed. And it's really on him. And let's not forget, he has some ability. He has wheels. He can take off. So, yeah, Drake May is definitely somebody I'm bumping up in my rankings. What about you, JT? What are your thoughts here?
I'm a big Drake May fan. The fact that he was able to do what he did last year with, let's be honest, a pretty garbage offense. I mean, O-line was horrible. I mean, we brought it up over and over and over again, how bad they were. You look at their wide receivers, who was he throwing to? I mean, Hunter Henry was their best player. Their running backs weren't even good. I mean, it was an ugly, ugly group. So giving him some time to come in, didn't start right away at the beginning of the year, comes in, plays 13 games, starts 12, basically in the season. The fact that he threw for 2,200 yards, 15 TDs, the 10 interceptions that's iffy, but he also was like having to make plays and do it all himself. If they can put people around him, kind of like when he was at North Carolina, not the most talent in the world around him, but they got a guy like Josh Downs, some other guys he'd go to. I think he's an underrated rusher. I think Drake May actually has the ability to run for, I think he can run between 350 and 500 yards in a season. I really do. I think he's on the way up. If they can get the coaching staff figured out this year and put it together, I like the hire. I really do. I think it's going to steady them. If they can figure out how to put some offense around him and get this O-line together, I like it. He's right there with me in that group. If you're talking, Caleb Williams, T-Law, Drake May, they're all right there together for me. So I'm a fan of him. Still young guy, only 22 years old. I think he's on the way up. Now, he's got a little more work to do than I think some of these other guys, not because he's not as talented as them, but I just think team-wise, he doesn't have as good a player as them. But you know what? I've seen people rank him really, really high. I know on the DLF rankers, looking at their list, if you look at them, he's at number 7 right now on their list, ranked 4th, 7th, 8th, 8th, 13th, and 13th. So they're a little higher than even I am on him. I like him a lot. I think that's maybe just a hair high right now. If he can add weapons, then I think he can get there for sure. But I need to see some more help for him. But I think he has all the ability, if he can get guys around him. I just think he could be to me, he's a guy that can hit 4,000 yards, 30 plus TDs, and get you 400, 500 yards rushing as well.
No, love it. Aiden, who's another quarterback you have on the rise? Does that even make sense? You get what I'm saying.
No, that's good. I'm gonna do CJ Stroud of the Houston Texans, because just look at what they have done. Everyone clamored, oh, they need a franchise tackle. Oh, they need some kind of veterans. They add Cam Robinson, they add Trent Brown, they drafted Ariante Ursery relatively high, and then everyone says, oh, what is Tank Dell gonna be? Oh, is Christian Kirk a significant enough investment? Well, to go along with Nico Collins, they add both Iowa State guys and Jalen Knoll and Jaden Higgins, who I was a huge fan of, and they drafted Woody Marks as a sleeper pass catching back out of the backfield. I'm not trying to sound hyperbolic with this, but I think from a fantasy perspective, CJ Stroud could have potentially one of the biggest bounce back seasons we've seen in quite a while, specifically in recent memory. He just got so unlucky last year, I feel like, with all the injuries to the weapons all at once, with that domino effect, if you will, and the offensive line getting injured and just being flat out brutal and just terrible, unfortunately. I think we're going to see a huge bounce back from CJ Stroud. I'm still very much in on him for the future, and I think 2025 specifically, it's all wheels up for him. All systems go, if you will. I mean, I just don't see any downside to CJ Stroud. DeMeco Ryans, even though he's a defensive-minded guy, they pass quite a bit over there in Houston. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know what you think, but I'm very much in on CJ Stroud. I think he's going to have a monster bounce-back season with everything they added in the draft.
JT, what are your thoughts here?
I couldn't agree more. He's my QB 7. Now is the buy time for CJ Stroud. He was at an all-time high going into last season. Then, of course, like Aiden said, injuries. Everything went wrong for Texas last year. Nuts like that. To me, you got it's the buy if you're going to go get him. I think he is going to come back big time. You look at the stats, you look at everything that happened. Rookie year, 4,100 yards, 23 touchdowns, 5 picks. So, more yards than Caleb Williams, more yards than May, more yards than Daniels, about equal touchdowns, about equal picks. All he did last year, played 2 more games last year, but he dropped to 3,700 yards. Not terrible. It's just not 4,000. Dropped to 20 touchdowns and 7 more picks. Picks from year to year, those things can happen. I think he's into a big bounce back. To me, he is going to be a consistent 4,000 yard passer, being 25 to 30 touchdowns in his career, probably around 10 picks. CJ Stroud was my QB1 last year, way above. I way above Bryce Young. I told everybody I would draft him number 1 overall.
I would
2 years ago. I mean, I was like, I absolutely loved him. I thought he was by far the best quarterback in the draft. I'm buying this dip big time on CJ Stroud. If people are willing to give him up, I'm selling a lot for him, because the price he was bringing going into last season was astronomical. If you were trying to get him, it was astronomical. I mean, people had him ranked as like QB 1, 2, or 3. I mean, he was like, he was up there with Josh Allen price. People were just going nuts with his price. If you can get it down right now, like Aiden said, everything that went wrong could go wrong last year, went wrong for them. And he still put up 37 yards and 20 plus touchdowns. So the stats were there. Injuries from the wideouts. I just don't know how people just completely, again, it's recency bias. People just way overreact to one season. I I love CJ Stroud. Like I said, he's in my top 10. I think I have him as 7th overall.
We can't forget that he had one of the best real life and fantasy rookie seasons we've seen in like recent memory. So
I mean, if you flop his years, here's all you have to do: flop his seasons. Have him go for 3,700, 20 touchdowns and 12 picks as a rookie, and then come back the next year and go 41, 23, and 5. He would be. No one would be questioning him in top 5 to 7. It's just because the one season flipped. And if you're playing Dynasty, you have to pay attention to those things. And when everybody else flips out, you got to go the other way. You just got to do it.
Yeah, you got to take advantage of the overreaction.
Absolutely.
You got to play to the emotions of the crowd. Yeah, I know I have him as my QB6 in Dynasty, so I think we're all on the board here. Trying to think. Have we gone through 3 apiece, you and me, Aiden, or are we just done 2? Or you need to give your 3rd?
No, that was all we did, I think.
Okay. All right. Well, let's talk about some fallers then. Let me start us off here. I actually have, believe it or not, Kyler Murray dropping to quarterback 16. I get it. Look, I get it, folks. I get it. But he's a mobile quarterback. He gets you the rushing yards. He gets you this and that. I'm like,
no, he didn't.
Thank you. Like this is not Kyler Murray pre ACL injury. There's something wrong here. And it's almost like every season he's played in the NFL, like it's great in the beginning, and then like as the season goes on, he like just disappears. And that kind of scares the shit out of me. I'm not going to lie, especially when I'm trying to bank, long-term fantasy, set it and forget it success here at the quarterback position. That is a little concerning. He finished last year in fantasy points per game as a quarterback 14. 21 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, only 500 yards. That is, you're expecting more, right? And then you're surrounding him with, Marvin Harrison Jr. and you got Trey McBride and you bring in,
stable run game.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. The stable running game. It's almost like they're trying to take the ball out of his hands from a rushing perspective and keep him purely in the pocket. And you can find a lot of great pocket quarterbacks for fantasy. And, I think with the allure of what drew you to him in the beginning of his career for fantasy purposes, which is his rushing upside, kind of took a hit. Not really feeling that. JT, is that a little bit too bold there or a hot take?
I'm right with you. I've got him right in that quarterback 15-16 range. His stats, the crazy thing is his stats weren't great last year, but his stats were actually better than when you watched him play. He was not good last year, man. I watched a lot of Arizona games because I watched a lot of the afternoon games, and I'm a big Marvin Harrison Jr. fan, so I wanted to watch him. He missed open guys all over the place. Yeah. He just wasn't seeing guys, wasn't reading the field. Here's the thing. Kyler Murray, where he saved you, like you said, was the rushing yards. So, his second year in the league, 800 yards rushing, 11 touchdowns. Bam, dude, crushed it for you. Every other year, he's been right between 400 and 500 yards rushing with 3 to 5 touchdowns, which is not bad. It's solid. But here's the problem with that. You start looking at the rest of these quarterbacks. These guys can get you 4, maybe even 500 yards rushing. Caleb Williams can get you 300 yards rushing. I think Drake May can get you 400 yards rushing. Trevor Lawrence, if Trevor Lawrence could ever get a decent offensive line and move a little bit, he could probably get you 300 yards rushing. So his advantage of having that big rushing upside over the other guys, I don't think is as big as it used to be in a lot of situations. And then you look at his stats again. I bring it up, but everybody who's ripping these other guys for not, is not playing that great, blah, blah, blah. You go look at his stats and everybody's like, oh, you got like 3,800 yards. Right there the same with everybody else. 21 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. If you're not getting the rushing yards with Kyler Murray, you're not getting anything better than the rest of these guys who I actually think are better quarterbacks and younger. So, and they're on better teams, I think. So to me, Kyler Murray, I'll take him if he falls and people want to trade him really cheap. but he is not a guy I'm actively going out and trying to get. I really am not. I feel like he's on the downside.
What's really cheap for you? As I have Kyler Murray and I'm trying to get rid of him. What is really cheap for you? Like what do you give it? What
I need to do that math. I need to look at there and decide what is cheap for me and what I will do for Kyler Murray. There's just so many other guys I'd rather have at this point in his career. I just, I feel like he's a little bit on the downside. I still think he's a solid QB as far as fantasy is concerned. There's just so many other guys I'd rather have at this point. There really is.
Yeah,
and again, his rushing upside was the deal breaker for him. And now I just don't know if his rushing upside moving forward is going to be as high as it was in the past compared to some of these other guys. If you can get other guys that are better QBs that can run for 300 and he runs for 500, give me the better QB that runs for 200 yards less.
Aiden, what are your thoughts here? Kyler Murray.
I'm right there with you guys. I've literally said all of Kyler Murray's career that he's the one of the most overrated QBs in the entire league. Like, he's an inconsistent passer. Okay. Even with Marvin Harrison Jr., Trey McBride, he still can't get it done. And the rushing has fallen off a cliff for fantasy purposes over the last couple years. So, like, I'd personally be looking to sell Kyler Murray. I think he's still too overranked as well because of the quote unquote rushing upside that's really not there anymore. I don't think people have come around to that maybe nearly as much as they should. So Kyler Murray, in my opinion, is overrated. I don't see a bright outcome here, if you will, over the next couple of years, other than he's on the downturn.
All right, Aiden, who's the quarterback that's falling for you?
For me, it's Sam Darnold of the Seattle Seahawks. I know he wasn't a massive dynasty asset or anything like that, but people were like coming out the Minnesota Vikings researching. You're like, oh, Seattle, maybe he can do it again. Like, I personally was not a lot bit skeptical of what he would look like under Kevin O'Connell's system, like so many Kevin O'Connell's system, like so many others have. And the Seahawks traded away DK Metcalf, so I wasn't thrilled about that. People are going to look at this 3-year deal and say, oh, it's a 3-year huge $100 million deal. Not really. If you really look at the specifics, it's kind of dressed up to be a 3-year deal, when in reality, it's a one year guaranteed deal, and then we'll see team options after that for the last 2 years. I don't think he has a ton of weapons other than the JSN personally, and I wasn't a Jalen Miller guy at all in the draft, but clearly they took him in the 3rd round. They wanted to see him, and if Sam Darnold doesn't pan out this year, who knows that at the end of the record, midseason, they're like 2-6, 2-7, 2-8, somewhere in there, and what have you, then they could turn to Jalen Milroe. Or Jalen Milroe, in a lot of people's eyes, is probably the franchise QB for the next 2 or 3 years, whether Darnold survives that or not. So I just feels kind of like a gross dynasty asset, if you will, in Sam Darnold. I think Jalen Milroe will always keep creeping over his shoulder as soon as maybe at the mid to end of this year if the record's really bad, and that fan base will be clamoring for Mike McDonald to do that. So I don't know. I just don't feel good about Sam Darnold, especially after the drafting of Jalen Milroe.
What about you, JT? What do you think about Sam Darnold's dynasty value?
Me and John McGlynn might be stands for Sam Darnold. We've loved Darnold forever. I think fantasy purposes, he is lower than a lot of people. To me, he's one of my favorite buys in the fact that I just think a lot of people are off on him. I think Aiden's right. The fact that it's going to be tough for him to match the season he had last year for the Vikings. But if you're on other people who don't like him as well, to me, he's my cheapest QB2, QB3 that I can get for my team. I'll go buy him because I definitely think Milroe, the price is definitely lowered because people are like, oh, they took Milroe in the 3rd, who I don't love Milroe. And I actually took Milroe in some rookie drafts this year where I have Darnold just to kind of cover myself. So I took him there, but to me, Darnold's a nice piece. If you're out there desperate for a QB, he's probably going to be a guy that's going to give you okay numbers. He's not going to win you a league, but if you're desperate for QB help, you can probably get him cheaper than almost anybody else because so many people are going to be out on him. Yeah. I don't have Darnold ranked high, even though I like Darnold. So don't tell his mom that because I love Darnold, but I don't have him ranked very high. He's not in my top 20. He's about 20. 5 for me, probably. I don't have my list sitting right in front of me on that, but he's probably around QB 25 for me. So
there for me too.
I'm not high on Darnold. I'm not low on Darnold. I like him for the price. If I can go get him, I'm going and get him, especially on a QB needy team. If he's my QB 4 on a team, I'd be trying to move him. And see if I can find a team that really needs some help and get rid of him just in case everything falls apart in Seattle and he gets replaced. At least you get some of them early before it falls apart. I don't think he will, personally. I think he'll be okay in Seattle, but I think we saw the absolute Sam Darnold max last year in Minnesota. I think that's the peak. I don't think he'll ever have a better fantasy season than he had last year.
There's no ceiling left there. He provides a good enough floor for fantasy, but like there's no rushing ceiling or anything like that. He just is who he is. Like, it's just what it is.
I think he's a solid guy. I think he's older, but I think he's closer to Bryce Young and those guys. I know other people take Bryce Young because he's younger, sees the upside. I think he's kind of in that range. He's slightly older. People forget too, Sam Darnold's still just 27.
He declared
you
at a
think
young
he's
age.
80. You think he's 80 years old, but he came in the league at 20, so he's only 27. I think he's possibly got a couple good years left. The situation is just not as good. Minnesota was prime situation for him. It's just not. To me, it's like Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy has been in a prime situation for the Niners the last couple of years, but as soon as if you would move Purdy to Seattle from the Niners, I think immediately his value drops, just like Darnold's. Even though they're, I think Darnold's only 2 years older than Purdy, which seems kind of nuts, but they're closer in age than you think they are. So I like Darnold. To me, he has dropped a little bit, but I don't think many people were high on him in the first place. I think I was probably higher on him than almost anyone the last 3 years, to be honest with you.
All right, let's go over and I didn't realize how we are cutting into shoot the gap time. How dare I? So let's round out a couple more fallers at the quarterback position.
I'll give you my quick faller here.
Yeah, go for
it. I'll give you my guy real quick. Jordan Love, the Packers. I know a lot of people are in love. If you go back to me for the price where he's ranked, I don't like him where he's ranked. Now, I know this is going to sound a little crazy because I've been bringing up everybody else's stats and I'm like, oh, this guy, that guy, oh, he did this, he did that. And, you really should look at these stats for this guy. I think he's on the downswing, man. He threw for 4,100 yards, 32 touchdowns, 11 picks his first year as a starter in Green Bay. He's only 26, going on 27 here. 3,300 yards last year, 25 touchdowns, 11 picks. Here's the thing for me. Those are worse stats than almost every guy we've talked about so far. And I don't think Green Bay's offense is that great, to be honest with you. I really don't think they're going to be a super explosive offense. I think they caught people kind of off guard that first year, and I think people are adjusting to them. I think they're going to become more run heavy with Josh Jacobs as they go along. I really think we've seen the ceiling for Love as well. I think he's going to be a consistent 3,200 to 3,500 yards. He overinflated the touchdowns that one year. They had a ton of times where they were inside the 5 and he threw the ball when they ran the ball all the way down the field and he threw a touchdown. I think he's more consistently a 33 to 3,500 yard guy with 25 touchdowns and 10, 11 picks. I think that's who he is.
To jump in here quick, is this more so because he doesn't have a true wide receiver one he can funnel 100 plus targets to, or is it just because they're too run heavy and you see that continuing?
I don't love Jordan Love. I just as a
the player,
QB,
okay.
The player. I just don't love him as a player. There's so many other guys I look at and I watch the games and I watch their tape and I like them as better players. Jordan Love's another example of a guy. I think he's getting helped by his coaching staff. I think he has a good coaching staff. I think he has a good defense. I think the fact that they played from ahead a decent amount really helped him. I don't think he is. I think he hit his max of that first year of 4,000 yards. I really do. I know I'm talking kind of opposite of what I've talked to these other guys. I think he's going to just keep regressing where I think all these other guys are going to keep going up. So for me, Jordan Love, I know he's in a ton of people's top 10 if I look at DLF, he right now is ranked number 10 for them.
You're lower.
He's outside my top 15.
Wow.
He's closer to, he's closer to like, I have to be honest, he's closer to like 18, 20 for me. So there's just so many more guys I like. I just
Trevor
think
Lawrence.
I think he hit his number one season. But I'm just saying you could take Trevor Lawrence's worst season, and I think that is his like where he's gonna be at. So again, you look at Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams, I think, in his first year had basically Jordan Love numbers last year.
Yeah.
I think he's going all up. I think Jordan Love's going down. So I don't think Jordan Love's terrible. I just think I don't think we're ever going to see a 4,000 yard, 40 touchdown season out of him again. I just don't see that for me personally. So I'm moving him anywhere I can. People that love him are still into him. I traded him for Justin Herbert plus at the beginning of last year, and I was stoked. I was stoked about it.
You wouldn't go as far as to take Kyler over him, though, would you?
I think
we just talked about
they're really close to me. I would take Kyler over. I would take Kyler over Jordan Love.
I think there's a big gap there, but
I would rather have. I like I said, I have Kyler like around 15. I have Jordan Love around 18 to 20. So to me, I actually think they're both about 33 to 3,500 yard passing quarterbacks with the 20 plus touchdowns, 10 plus picks. I'll take the Kyler rushing yards, which aren't a ton more because Jordan Love's not going to give you much rushing. To me, they're very similar. I would take Kyler slightly ahead of Jordan Love. So that tells you how much I'm down on Jordan Love.
In favor of Love.
I have Love one spot higher than Kyler currently. All right, let's get really quickly rapid fire. Aiden and myself, quarterback faller. I'm going to go Patrick Mahomes, quarterback 17 in Dynasty. Look, he wins Super Bowls. He wins accolades. He gets, he's the best quarterback in the NFL. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. He's just not really doing it for fantasy, to be honest with you.
No,
the past
3
couple
years.
seasons.
Yeah.
Like it's one of those things where you go back to his let me pull it up here because I literally just had it. You go back to 2018, 50 touchdowns, right? Yes, that's exactly what we want from our QB1. Okay, but then after that, 26 touchdowns, 38, 37, 40. And then the past 2 years, 27, 26. Like, you know why people confused the Chiefs winning Super Bowls with Patrick Mahomes being a great fantasy asset, when in reality, the reason why the Chiefs won Super Bowls is because their defense stepped up and kept them in games and shut down the other team's offense. And then Patrick Mahomes wasn't asked to do too much. In the games where he's been asked to do too much is because his offensive line can't block worth a damn. And we saw what the Buccaneers did a couple of years ago. We saw what the Eagles did this past year. So it's one of those things where, look, he gave him all the accolades that he's due. Everything you want to say about him from a real football perspective. For fantasy, there are a lot more younger quarterbacks that are either, entering their second year or, potentially entering the league this year that could give you more upside. And it's really shifting a lot of these veteran quarterbacks down. And I think he's probably one of the more overhyped dynasty quarterbacks. Aiden, what are your thoughts here real quick?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Pat Mahomes is a great real life QB, but he doesn't really have a true X down the field receiver. Rashee Rice and Xavier were their real middle of the field running for catch guys. And you said it, Jorge, Patrick Mahomes hasn't given us anything to have high hopes for, if you will, in Dynasty or Redraft or any fantasy medium the past 2 or 3 years. I mean, it just hasn't been there. I think this is who he is. He's become a game manager really for fantasy, and that's not really what you want with if you want high upside in Dynasty. So that's where I'm at with it, and I agree.
All right, what's yours real quick? What's your faller? So go ahead, JT. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say from Mahomes, if you look at his numbers from last year, I hate to say it, I keep repeating it, they're almost identical to Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels without the rushing. So if you're going to take two guys are 22, 23 as opposed to guys 30, they're putting up the same stats now. if you can move Mahomes and get a younger guy, I think that's the move to do. The problem is, and this is the issue for a lot of these guys, when your team starts getting really good, they don't need you to throw for 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns because you got a good defense. Your team is good. You're winning games. And I think that's the issue for the Chiefs is now that they are good, their defense is good. They don't need Patrick Mahomes to win them games. He just needs to win it for him in the fourth quarter. He doesn't need to win the whole game for them. And while that's great in real life, it sucks for fantasy.
Yeah.
You want a guy throwing the ball all the way down the field. You want a guy whose defense kind of sucks. Thank you, Trevor Lawrence. You could have a huge year because your defense is no good and you're only going to win games if you absolutely ball out. So I think that's the issue with Mahomes. I still think Mahomes is just as good as he ever was. The problem is they don't need him to do what he was doing before. And for fantasy, he's just not as good. I still think he's a top 10 guy. I really do. The problem is he's now getting closer to 30. If you're not in win now mode and you have Patrick Mahomes, now's the time to try to maybe sell him off and get a young guy and rebuild if you can do it. He's still a solid fantasy quarterback. He's just not the guy that's winning the league for you like he did 3 years ago when he threw for 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns. You know what I mean? You're just not getting that production out of him anymore.
All right, Aiden, who's your quarterback follower before we get out of here?
Mine's Miami Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. I mean, the health speaks for itself. It really scares me a crap ton for Dynasty, to be honest, and put it bluntly with you. And if they do cut Tyreek Hill post June 1st cut, what does he really have? Jalen Waddle and a bunch of nobodies. And then I don't trust Mike McDaniel and his coaching staff for this scheme. We've been saying, oh, Tua's going to break out. Tua's going to break out for the last few years. Has he ever actually, though? Like, to me, Tua's disappointed in every category for fantasy over the last few years. Sure, I'll have spike weeks here and there, but he's going to give you next to nothing on the ground. And I don't think he's ever hit his true fantasy ceiling. So I'm going to Tua as a follower. The vibes around this whole Miami team, specifically Tua, are just like not good. And what if the bottom falls out and Mike McDaniel's fired and the health continues to go in the wrong direction for Tua and then he's replaced in a year or so? I just don't like how this feels at all, just hearing the chatter lately.
No, I love it. You know, it's one of those things where, you know, although the Malik Washington disrespect there, calling him a nobody.
Okay, he's not a nobody, but is he actually established or anything?
No, he's not established. I'm just, you know, one of my guys. What can I say? Real quick, JT, before we get out of here, what are your thoughts on Tua?
Yeah, I agree. I've actually been one of the few people that stood up for Tua the last couple of years, but it's the window is closing quickly. He's only played one full season his entire career. Yeah. Tyreek Hill not being what Tyreek Hill has been is a monster hurl for them. Can Waddle come back? If he does, that helps a ton. But if he doesn't, I mean, if you got a half-ass Waddle and no freaking Tyreek,
it's bad. It's rough.
Can Tua carry a team on his own?
No,
I don't think he can, man. That's the problem.
We've seen it.
I like Tua a lot with quality wide receivers because he is accurate. And I think if you keep him upright, he's good. But you just got to go with the percentages. He's only played one full season. And without those guys fully healthy, when those guys haven't been fully healthy, he has not looked good and the Dolphins haven't looked good.
Yeah.
Yep, that's a good call. All right, folks. Well, that's going to wrap us up here for Dynasty 365. Sorry for running a little bit over into shoot the gap time, but I promise you, JT and I will be efficient in the next hour. So
we'll jump right into it. We won't mess around.
Oh yeah,
yeah, exactly. We'll just you know,
just get right into this stuff. Yeah.
I was going to use a different analogy, but I think it's it's still PG time. It's still PG time.
No overalls yet. Nope.
We just passed the 9 o'clock hour. We got to get into the 10 o'clock hour for that kind of stuff.
No overall talk yet.
No overalls this week. They're in the washer right now. Anyhow, thank you very much for tuning in, everybody. Remember, we'll be back next week for more information about some of these players that we're talking about, as well as others from a dynasty perspective, from a rookie perspective. Please head over to fantasyandframes.com and check out all of our stuff over there. So for JT, I'm Jorge, and for Aiden, I'm Jorge. We'll see you all next week.